I'm Philip S Davies, and this is part of Chapter 1 of Destiny's Rebel. Chapter 1 Escape. Cat had always envied those who could choose their destiny, or find a quiet, easy, enjoyable one. Hers seemed to live as a sinking dread in the depths of her stomach. If only she hadn't been born who she was. Sometimes she could forget what was coming, but now it was too close to ignore. For months she'd counted down the days until her 18th birthday. That afternoon, when Aunt Sarika summoned Cat to her study, the count had reached 11 days. Sarika glared at Cat through narrowed eyes. If her face was no more sour than usual, that was only because she always looked like she was chewing a lemon. "When you are queen," Sarika announced to her, "you will need to understand service to others." With a curl of her lip, she plucked a flower from the vase on her desk. "So, young Catelyn, we have a plan for your last 10 days as a princess. As punishment for running away, you will work with the castle servants. It is discipline you need, and we're going to make sure you get it." She began to tear petals from the flower. Cat had perfected an expressionless face to wear like a mask and get her through all that she hated. That face was on now. "As a chance to prove you're not useless," Sarika continued, "this evening you will report to the treasury and polish the royal silver." She leaned forward in her chair and her voice dropped to a hiss. "You can expect the tasks to become much, much worse, you stupid little girl, because you leave us no choice but to break you." Her tone held a veneer of reasonableness, but she was ripping each petal into shreds. "Understand that we will crush you until you break. So why not give in now and save yourself all that distress?" Break her. So the punishment for running away was an excuse. Aunt Sarika and Uncle Ethabos were raising the stakes in the war of wills to come. "We will hurt you and humiliate you until you do everything we say. And don't think for one moment that becoming queen will save you. For you will still be our niece, and we will still be here, hounding you closer than your own miserable skin." Cat couldn't tear her eyes from the neat pile of shredded petals on the desk. She considered outright refusal and folded her arms in an attempt at defiant silence, because otherwise she'd be shaking. They couldn't try to humiliate or hurt her as queen, could they? Sarika crushed the flower stem until the juice oozed through her fingers. Cat met her aunt's cold grey eyes and saw the vicious fury there. Yes, they could, and they would, because they'd find ways to make her do whatever they wanted. They always did. For now, it was simpler to comply. She should have expected them to take full advantage of their last days of control over her. So that evening, Cat reported to the castle treasury. Cat lost track of time, but it seemed many hours later that the treasurer dismissed them. By then her whole arms ached from fingertips to shoulders, and the servant girls endured this every day. Cat plodded her solitary way up the stone steps to the 3rd floor. Apart from the aches, her first evening as a servant girl hadn't been too bad. She'd suffered worse from Uncle Ethabos and Aunt Sarika in the past, and it sounded as though she was about to do so again. Breaking her? What more did they have in store for her? Sarika had promised pain and humiliation, and there might even be injury. Would they stoop to a public demeaning of her? Cat trembled to think what Sarika would devise in a last attempt to subdue her to their will. The early skirmishes were over. The war of the rest of her life had begun. It had been a one-sided war until now, with all the power with her aunt and uncle. But as soon as Cat acquired some power of her own, the battle of wills would become merciless and cruel. There would be no escape from it, or from them. Once she was queen, she'd have to find new ways to resist them, to defy them, to make them abandon their attempts to keep power over her. But she would still be a prisoner, hemmed in on every side by duty, by etiquette, by the responsibility for which she wasn't ready. And nothing would ever make up for her loss of freedom or the chance to be herself. Cat slammed the bedroom door behind her, the boom of it echoing along the landing and down the stairs. If her aunt and uncle heard that, good. The bedroom was cool because the fire in the grate had subsided to ash. Her rooms were plain and functional, with a refreshing sparseness after the extravagance downstairs. Cat liked her refuge up here. Most days she didn't want to venture down at all into all that pointless court ritual and ceremony and etiquette that stifled the life out of her. The oil lamp flame showed her nightshirt laid ready, but Cat was in no mood to sleep. She plonked herself on the bed and untied the ponytail in her dark brown hair. Would they ever learn that forcing her to do things their way didn't work? The compulsion made her resist. Maybe it was too late now for them all to cooperate anyway. She stared at the rug, but her eyes were filling, her emotions rising. A tear escaped down her cheek, but she brushed it away. Only 10 more days to go, and then there would be no escape. She jammed a fist between her teeth to stifle a sob or a cry. Only when she whimpered with the pain in her fingers did she allow her muscles to relax. But it worked. A fire of resolve ignited inside her. No, Cat, no. Don't think about them. Their power over her lasted for only 10 more days. Then she might have the authority to resist them. But in the meantime, she remembered the crushed flower. She jumped up, wiped her eyes, and paced the room, rubbing the teeth marks on her fingers. She had to do something with this time she had left. To stay here and endure would drive her insane. She couldn't give them the chance to break her. Cat ran to the window, opened it, and thrust her head out. The cool night air was delicious. She could breathe again after the stuffy confinement of the castle. Ah, to be out there instead of stuck in here. The evening's vision of the crown in the treasury was fresh in her memory, and a childhood dream popped into her head. Her lost and broken crown, that she'd be the one to find and restore it. Yes. Cat knelt and dragged from under the bed her secret store, an old chest. From it she pulled a brown tunic, trousers, boots, and a dark green cloak, all of them worn and stained. She tore off the stained apron of the servant girl and donned the travelling clothes. She could get out of here, for one last escape. Did she dare? Yes, of course she did. Cat fished from the chest a pack, rope, pouch of coins, and dagger. From hooks on the wall she took down, with reverent care, her quiver of arrows and shortbow. She filled the pack from the drawers. How to escape from Anestra City and not be followed or caught this time? The harbour? A ship? Yes, she could sail somewhere and be back in time. In fact, ships on the coast went north to Lassany or south to the Caldonate. If she found one going north, she could even demand that Duke Bassacarin tell her what he knew of her crown. She paused. It was nearly midnight, and no ship would set sail until dawn. Her departure had to be in the dead of night anyway, once everyone else was asleep. She paced again, fiddling with the hem of her tunic. The steady flame and gentle light of the oil lamp calmed her. She stopped to touch the childhood ornaments that lined the drawers and mantelshelf. A crudely painted cottage of clay, a model horse whittled from wood. If this was a battle, was this a tactical retreat, a withdrawal, to return when she had authority? It would serve them right for calling her useless and remove her from their plans to break her. They would be furious, of course, but then they were always furious. She tied the rope to the leg of her bed, and then lay down and tried to dream of nothing but freedom and adventure. Kat woke with a start. The oil lamp had burned out, and a glimmer of starlight filtered through the open window. She hadn't had the nightmare. Was that because she'd decided to go? Her pulse quickened. Kat sat up, rubbed her face and retied her ponytail. She pulled on her boots and hoisted the pack to her shoulders. Drawing up the hood of her cloak, she slung the quiver and shortbow across her body. A freshening breeze blew in through the window from across the sleeping city. She fed the rope across the stone sill until it reached the grass 3 floors below, and climbed out into the night. Her descent would have been envied by a spider on a thread. At the bottom, she slunk back into the shadows and checked for guards. The castle was quiet. Torches flickered at the gatehouse and keep, but the darkness of the grounds reassured her. Ah, she loved it. Her senses sharp, her body as taut as a bowstring. This was what made her come alive. And tonight's escape route was the chestnut tree, tall and close enough for a leap onto the outer wall. She ran across the lawn to the row of laurel bushes and eased herself between them. Halfway up the tree, she heard a shout. They'd spotted the rope, and the chase was on. Kat scrambled through whipping twigs to upper branches and sprang to catch the parapet. Her fingers clung to ancient stone, and with a heave, she mounted the wall. She raced to the outer side, vaulted the battlements, and used the familiar cracks and bumps in a rapid descent to the street. Cries came from the grounds and the gate, and booted feet ran along the top of the wall. Her fingers protested as Kat slid the remaining distance to the ground and sprinted for Prince's Park. She crouched in darkness behind a hedge, drawing deep breaths to steady her nerves. She clasped raw fingers and rubbed scraped knees. A brief smile passed over her face. Perhaps she shouldn't treat this as a game, but some childhood playfulness remained. So, escaping the castle? 1 point to her. Come on then, slow coaches. She'd see if the guards could catch her as she stole away into the night.